bros and besties. I'm Kaylee.
I'm Jenny.
And we have our brew, Do You? This is Mike's Hard.
This is just an ice. Because.
And we are here with author L.N Cole, the author of Kingdom of Vines and Silence. So do you want to tell us a little bit about, it's a trilogy. It's going to be a trilogy, right? 3-book series?
Yes. So it's planned out to be a trilogy. There's like potential for like other like spin-off type books later, but the main series is going to be a trilogy.
I cannot wait for book 2.
Wait. I'm just like, anytime.
Without any pressure.
I spent hours like all the way up until 20 minutes ago today I was writing. So I'm like really trying to like shake myself out of the like writing mind space right now.
That's good that you're in it though, because it would be worse if you were in a writing slump and you couldn't get it out.
Oh, until like the past few weeks have been rough up until today. I'm like my husband volunteered to take the children and go elsewhere so I could actually write today.
I love that. So since you're self-published, do you give yourself the deadline, or with Amazon's KDP program, do they give you a specific deadline for it?
No, you get to set your own release date and you can like push it if you need to. My hope is that I'm at least putting out a book a year. If I can do 2 in a year, awesome. But also I don't want to push myself. I do have a full-time job and 2 kids. So sometimes, it's not going to happen closer together than a year. But
I mean, you jumped into book 2 really, really fast right after you published book 1. I feel like you hit the ground running and you were just like, bam, got it for you guys. I'm working on.
Yeah, I was working on it right away. And then I like had underestimated how much time marketing your first book actually takes. So then I was like trying to focus on that for a while, and I wasn't writing as much for a while, but I'm trying to focus on just finishing the manuscript for the second book. And then I can spend as much time as I want marketing. And I already have it set up for my editor to get it in the first week of October. She gets it. So I'm hoping to finish the manuscript for book 2 at the end of this month, which the end of this month or early next month, then do self-edits and have my alpha reader read it over. She catches the like insane things that for some reason I do not catch that I need to fix. And then September beta readers, October editor.
So for just all listeners, can you explain the differences between the alpha, beta, and then ARC readers?
Sure.
So one of them, they know how to and what the differences are of what the author expects from each one.
Yeah, so an alpha reader, not everybody has an alpha reader. It's pretty much your very first reader reading like your very first draft. They are doing the Lord's work, the alpha readers. Mine is a very good friend of mine. Her name is Chloe. She works in publishing, but on the like educational side. But she's very good at catching like inconsistencies and like things that my eyes just will not see. She reads through it and catches that stuff. Beta readers are after that first round of editing, so it's more polished than the alpha reader gets. But they still catch a lot of stuff like, plot holes that need to be addressed or like stray, weird sentence structure and stuff like that. And beta readers are really great because it's like your first legitimate like reader feedback. Like your alpha reader is more of like a pre-editor, like a low-key an editor, but like actual reader feedback, those are the beta readers first. And the beta readers get to give input that could actually change your story. Like you can actually change your manuscript based on what they say. ARC readers are getting the final version of your book, so they shouldn't be giving feedback, like constructive feedback, because there's nothing you can do about it at that point. Like it's already done outside of like, hey, I found a typo on this page, which thank goodness for my ARC readers like you guys who let me know as I was going through trying to do the final proof if they saw something. Because by the time you're at that stage, you've read the thing so many times that your eyes just like skip over stuff and you can't even, like it's subconscious. You're not trying to do it, but sometimes like Microsoft Word or like Readsy or Scrivener or whatever you use, Pro Writing Aid, sometimes those things just don't pick up some of the weird typos. So you need like actual human eyes to catch
That
that.
aren't yours.
Yeah.
That aren't yours. So aside from catching like the little stuff like that, ARC readers are really, they're there to review your book, to be the first people who review it and like recommend it to people. It's really important to get like a lot of Amazon reviews early for the algorithm when you're an indie, so your book gets pushed out. So yeah, that's like the difference between the three. Again, not everybody has an alpha, but I do, because she was the one who like, she's like my hype woman. She convinced me to publish in the first place, and she just happened to also work in publishing, so she's a great first reader.
So how's book 2 going? Well, we kind of know now.
Yeah.
I'd say book 2 is coming along. We have a little timeline. We're in on the timeline. I love it. But where did your idea for Kovas come from originally? Was it like a dream or like
Was it a dream? No, really, like I will just zone out into like very vivid daydreams sometimes, and like sometimes I write them down. And Kovas came from pretty much a spin-off of thinking too much about the Illyrians and Akatar. Like I thought way too much about the winged men. And it just spiraled after that. And Irene from Throne of Glass, like the whole like healer culture. Like I really loved that. So I don't know, I daydream a ton. And I decided to write down like an outline because I had mentioned it to Chloe, my alpha reader. Before Kovas was even like a real thought, I had mentioned her like, oh, I bet you I could like write a whole thing. And she's like, so do it. So write the whole thing.
What's stopping you?
Yeah, pretty much. And I didn't know the first thing about publishing. I didn't even really realize self-publishing was an option. I mean, I had heard of indie authors before. I read a couple of them, but I didn't know what went into it. So it kind of scared me. So I was like, should I really just do it? Like, that's intimidating. I plotted the whole trilogy in like a couple of weeks, and I've been working off that outline since.
Oh, actually, you had a question about that. So as you've been writing, has your outline changed from what you had originally thought of? Has your story or ending or whatever your thought process was in the beginning, has that changed now that your characters have developed and kind of taken the story themselves?
So they change a little bit. There's definitely been like subplots that have just like appeared organically while I was writing that I was like, oh, that wasn't part of the plan, but sure, let's do that. For the most part though, I stick to the outline. My outline was not like super concrete to the point where like there wasn't wiggle room in between. Like I could still be creative with each plot point, like how I get from plot point A to B to C. But I still generally follow that plot. I also like make them much more specific when I'm actually like about to write that book. So like the outline for book 2 and 3 look completely different right now because book 2 I'm working on right now. So I've like really fleshed it out. It's like grown as I've been working on it. And then book 3 is still bare bones until I finish book 2.
That's fair. That's exciting though.
Yeah. I don't know if you were on a live or if maybe it was one of your videos that I saw, but I saw you talk about your cover and how that process worked for you. And I thought it was really interesting because you said you found it online, right? Was it through Etsy that you had found it? And I don't think a lot of people know that that's even a thing that they can look at. So for any people that are wanting to self-publish, can you talk about how you even found out that you could get book covers that way, or just how you've done self-publishing?
Yeah, so I had been working under the assumption that you had to get like a custom cover designed for you, and I thought like it was going to be this big, like super expensive ordeal. And a lot of indie authors do just save up the money to get a custom cover because they like feel very passionately about that. I realized that there were designers that pre-made covers that they just liked, so they made it and they put it up for sale, and it's much more affordable than like custom.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Getting yours custom made because it's just there. You just pay for it. They give it to you. They like put in your title and your author name and your blurb, and then they just give it to you. So I kept an eye on like a few different designers on Etsy that I really liked their covers, but I hadn't like seen one that would work really for Kovas yet. And that was when like this cover popped up, ink book designs on Etsy. They're fantastic. I love most of their covers. But I saw this and I was just like, oh my goodness. It was in their fantasy section. So I was like, with the feathers and the forest, I was like, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And now I am going to have them custom make the other two, because obviously the first one I bought from them. So the only way to get matching now is to have them do the next two. That's how they get you.
Yeah. So do they, obviously they probably charge more with that, or is it around the same price to where you're still able, it's like still affordable in a way?
So this was only like $80.
That's not bad.
No, it wasn't bad at all. Especially because I was like brand new to it and thought I was going to be spending like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. To get like book 2 and 3 custom made is about like $250 each. So I'll be spending like $500 for the next 2 covers, but that's all right. At least I have a book to like save money from royalties from first, instead of just spending like my own money.
Have they done like a mock-up for you to where you can kind of see what the next one is gonna look like, or were you able to give them ideas, or are you just letting them do their thing?
So I actually just talked to them last week. So the release, so I'm hoping to send out arcs for book 2 in November, December. I'm probably going to give it more time because of the holidays. Like instead of only a month for arcs, like 6 to 8 weeks, because holidays are crazy. And January release. So I reached out to them last week just to get like a feel for how busy they are, pretty much. I was like, how busy are you? Are you going to be able to do my cover? And they'll be able to fit it in a few weeks. They'll start working on it. So they already know what I want them to do, which is pretty much this cover, just like the background changed and some color changes, and obviously the title and stuff. But yeah, so hopefully we'll have a cover reveal somewhat soon.
That's what I'm so excited. How did your Goodreads giveaway go?
It was so good. I posted about it in my like little update video, which got like no views because I hadn't been posting in ages, so people haven't seen it. Nearly 2,000 people like entered the giveaway, and I finally see like the 50 copies in my KDP that were given away. So very exciting. I couldn't believe that nearly 2,000. It was like 1,987 people or something. I can't remember the number. That was a couple days before it ended. But yeah, it was super cool.
Are you able to see the traffic on Amazon? Like, could you see if more people went and looked at your book on Amazon since the Goodreads was up? Is that possible to see, or is it just via who buys it?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I could look at, like, I run Amazon ads, and I could go look and see how many people like searched my actual like book title.
Yeah.
And if that like bumped up once the Goodreads thing was on, which probably did. But also, like, I don't think I'd see a bump in sales because those people were probably waiting to see if they were going to get it in the giveaway. So it's not like they were buying it. They were probably just looking at it. Could see a bump in sales now that it's over. And once people realize that they didn't get it for free, they might just buy it themselves. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about, is if it just help people like go and even send traffic over there, even if they don't buy it, just going and looking at it. Because you know the algorithm, that means that whoever's friends with them, their phones are gonna start getting recommendations.
I'm just glad that like when you enter a giveaway, it has to be on your wish list. So then it'll be rec to people who read like the same books as you and your friends and stuff. So I'm just happy for that alone. But also having 50 people, like 50 more people have my book is exciting too.
It's amazing.
Especially when those reviews start coming in, because then that's hopefully 50 more reviews that will help bump it up.
Definitely. I feel like the people who are like on Goodreads that much and entering giveaways and stuff like tend to review more than just like someone who stumbles upon it. So.
And I also feel like Goodreads in general are for the reviewers versus just people who buy from Amazon.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
I feel like it's so funny when you look on, I don't know if it's Amazon or Goodreads. One of them shows both. It'll show like the number of Goodreads reviews and the number of Amazon reviews. It might be Amazon. And Goodreads always has like an insane number of reviews, and then Amazon has like a tiny, like such a tiny percentage of that.
Yeah.
People love to review on Goodreads.
I feel like it's the social media of like
Of books.
the book reviewing
Yeah.
community.
I know, and then on like Storygraph, there's like nothing.
I don't even think I know what Storygraph is.
It's like the alternative to Goodreads. I use both because Storygraph has like some features that I like. Like it'll actually compile like genre data, and it'll tell you like what percentage of your reads this year were like sci-fi or fantasy or romance. Like I'm a stats nerd, so I just love seeing that at the end of the year. So I do both.
I love that.
I do think once the third one's out, I'm gonna take like a tiny break
Oh, please do.
and catch up on reading.
Yeah.
I was just telling Jenny that between your book and then I just read The Last Lost Girl, and I had the same feeling for Bowl, where I just want to scream because it's like, what?
There's clearly so much more that needs to be addressed.
Yes, I'm like, I have so many questions now. And obviously I can't just be like, hey, can you please tell me how this is going? Because I'm going to...
It is really hard. So like there's two types of writers, right? There's the pantsers and the plotters. And the pantsers will just like write indefinitely and just like figure it out as they go. And then later they'll be like, oh yeah, let's fix this plot situation. And then there's the plotters who like worry about all of the extra stuff later and write like the plot down first. And that's me. And I outlined the whole thing thinking I was going to write one book. Initially, I was like, I will start with one book. I'll do one book. But then I had plotted out so much and started writing Kovas, and I was like, if this is one book, it's going to be 1,000 pages and no one will buy it. Like, I cannot have it be one book. So then I had to go through my outline and like pick where to divide it into 3, and I hated it.
That would be so stressful. It's like, okay, where is the fine line to where I can cut this off?
Yeah.
One.
Then I was like, then I was like pushing myself to like, I need to publish faster. Cause like I too would be upset if it ended right there and I didn't have the second one to read right away.
If Rebecca's getting away with it, you'll make it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Honestly, that calmed me down a bit. Rebecca.
Yeah.
Right.
Cassie asked if you're going to do any book events as an author in the future. And then she said, like, Once Upon a Con.
Yeah, I'll try for Once Upon a Con 2026. That will probably be like a huge event. So I don't really want to start there. I'll probably do smaller stuff first. Like there's a Books A Million right by me. I'm trying to think. There's like a couple of Ohio-based book conventions in like Columbus. And I can't remember the name of it. And I quite literally just looked into how to become an author there last week or something. There's a couple book conventions in Ohio that are closer and much smaller scale that I'm going to try first. So I'm hoping to get a spot in the one in a few months, but it's like raffle style for indies. So they have like set trad published authors, and then they'll have like 5 spots and they'll let indie authors sign up and they'll like randomly give indies those spots. Yeah. So like hopeful, but also I'm sure there's a ton of indie authors who are applying. So we'll see. That one would be nice just because it'll be shortly before book 2 is coming out. So then the next one's coming out in a couple months. But if not, 2026 will probably, later in 2025. Once book 2 is like out, I'll probably get more into book signings and stuff. I'm like most nervous about just doing them at bookstores, like random bookstores. I'm like, that seems real awkward for like anyone who reads any genre walks in and I have to try to like talk to them. Yeah. Like book conventions, like fantasy book conventions, I am cool with that. Like I know they read fantasy. Like aside from if they look like a minor and I have to be like, no, you're not old enough. Probably cool.
I feel like book people just love meeting authors in general, though. Well, not all of them. There's always situations where that is not
I was gonna say, I feel like I get like spooked because I'm in like the author space as well. Mostly on like threads. I talk to authors the most these days, but like you just hear like horror stories about signings sometimes, and you're like, I'm just gonna hide behind the screen. I don't need to do that.
So I was like, actually, it's not always like that.
Yeah, Taylor, that's what it feels like when like you're at a bookstore. Like, hey, play my book. You have no idea who I am. At least fantasy conventions, you know that they love fantasy, so you can like pitch it. But what if I like ask it's a diehard thriller reader? Like, hey, do you wanna? No, that hurt my soul. Sorry.
There's this little indie bookstore here. It's called well, not here. It's like 2 hours away, but it's called Bookish Boutique. And they try and have indie authors come and do book signings like twice a month. And I just love it because like it gives them the opportunity to kind of branch out, but it's a smaller bookstore, so it's not super overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. I tried to find, there's a couple of like smaller bookstores that aren't like Books A Million or Barnes and Noble, like around here. But full disclosure, they're in some pretty sketchy parts of Cleveland. And I am a small woman and I am nervous about going to those areas. I'm like, what? I don't know. Maybe I will just go to the Books A Million 4 minutes away. If I venture too far into the city, it makes me nervous.
That'll be so exciting, though.
Yeah.
To see you doing videos of you at book events and everything. Oh, that's gonna be so.
Yeah, it's gonna be super exciting. It's just like I'll do it if we're close to book 2 being out. I would like to have more than one book published when I start doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because then people might buy 2 or 3 at a time, like they might just buy the whole series because why not? And then they're like fully in it.
Yeah, because then it's binge worthy.
Yeah, then you can just binge the whole thing. Everybody likes to binge things now, so.
I know. I just saw, I don't know who it was. I don't even know where it was, if it was on TV or what, but it was a discussion about how people binge books. And it was kind of a negative take on it. And I think it was an author saying how they can see when it's happening and it's all well and good. But for people who are traditionally published, not self-published, how the book 1 goes determines whether they're allowed to write book 2 and 3. So if people are just waiting to buy it all once they're all out, it hurts the possibility of there ever being a trilogy.
Well, and it's like that with self-publishing too. Like if you don't get the support with book 1 and make some kind of money from your first book after, because like you have to make back whatever you spend on like your cover and your editing. Like most of us don't just have thousands of dollars of expendable income just to keep publishing books indefinitely. So like if you don't get support for the first book, you might not be able to publish the second book.
Yeah, it's true.
So
yeah, that was a viewpoint that I've never thought about. I mean, I don't think I've ever binged series like waited until they're all out. I'm drawn by cover, so even if I don't know what the book about, I'll buy it because the cover's pretty, and then I'll read it, and then I'll be like, oh, I wonder if there's a second one, and then
yeah, I don't pay attention much at all, which means I usually do get mad when I read the first one or the first 2 and then realize that like the next ones aren't going to be out forever, and then I'm like, oh my goodness, like
forever waiting.
Oops, because I just don't go and see if the rest are out yet.
I'm right there with you. Yeah. So we'll suffer together.
Yeah, sometimes I'll binge like a whole series once I realize that all of them are out. I mean, Savage Lands I blew through like bam, 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 all the way to the end.
It's so good. I
read the first one thinking that maybe there's 2 or 3 of these, and then realized that there are many Savage Land books.
I just found Deadlands at Goodwill. Because I don't have any, I don't have any of the physical copies. And when I saw that, I was like, done. I
didn't have the 1 because I bought it and then realized that it was Kindle Unlimited or whatever. So then I was like, oh, I could have been reading these all on my Kindle this whole time. But I do have the first one somewhere. Here it is.
I have the first one too. It's so good.
The Deadlands one that I found is hardcover, and I'm a hardcover girly. So I was like, this was meant to be, but now I need
a hardcover. Nice.
Yeah.
And book 7 just came out not too long ago. I think we talked about that when she
Yeah, because I said I needed to reread the first 6 because I blew through the 6 of them. I was like, and now I can't remember the plot of it at all. It's been so I gotta read it again.
Yes,
Yeah.
Taylor, we love thrifting books.
There's a Goodwill that's in Fort Walton, and it has every time I go, I find amazing books. I'm like, I love this, but it's the only one. Every other one around here sucks. It's just that specific one. So there's a
fantasy reader nearby who keeps donating their books.
I'm like, whoever you are, thank you. Keep doing it because you're helping me.
Lolly Reads says, do you have a site to buy your book, or is it through Amazon only?
So it is on Amazon, but I also publish through Draft to Digital, so you should be able to buy at like Barnes and Noble. It's also on Apple Books through Draft to Digital. It covers like a bunch of ebook platforms and a couple of like physical retailers as well. I wanted to reach as far as I could, even though like most book sales happen on Amazon, so I published at both. Probably going to publish with Google Play in the future at some point. There's apparently a lot more readers there than I thought there were. And then I'm like exploring the idea of Ingram Spark. Cassie, I was selling on TikTok Shop for a little while. I was selling like signed and sprayed copies on TikTok Shop. I sold like 10 of them and then stopped until the second book comes out because it is very time consuming to spray the edges of all your books.
That's when you were doing like gold and green and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I still have all the stuff. It's just put away right now. I'm like, I'll break that out again later.
I remember seeing those videos and I was like, I need them.
I love the sprayed edge. I wonder if I even have, like, I had some test ones, like some practice ones I did it on, but I'm pretty sure family members, I offered them to family members who wanted to read it, and I was like, here you go. I have a bunch of copies of these that I practice spraying edges on.
I love it though. I bought like 4 copies of Kovas because we were going to do a couple giveaways. And then I also wanted to try and do like a stencil with my Cricut. I just haven't done it yet, but I will eventually get to it. So I've got a couple copies for practice on them.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited.
The signing is whatever. That takes like a second, but then you have to like ship them all. And TikTok Shop gives you like a certain time period. Like they put a clock on it. Like you have to ship it within 48 hours or whatever. So I'm like, that is stressful. I cannot.
Oh, especially when you do have a full-time job and everything else. Like that's
it's like I work full-time and have children. Like I don't know what I'm going to be able to.
Too much from me.
It's like I'm already trying to write books.
I've seen a couple authors do that though, where they do a TikTok live, and anyone who joins the live, they'll sign and like personalize the book while they're on.
Yeah, that's what I like wanted to do initially and didn't realize the sheer quantity of work that is involved with that, because you have to order like tons of author copies, and then you have to like obviously do the lives, sign them, all that, and then you have to ship out all of them. And I'm like, ooh, can't do that as much as I thought I could.
Yeah, not prepared for that.
Maybe once my kids are older, and if I ever make enough money to quit my day job.
Yeah.
So you talked about this a little bit earlier, but how important are reviews for a debut indie author?
Oh, for a debut, they're like infinitely important. So with Amazon, if you don't have at least 50 reviews, they don't push your book anywhere. At least that was the most recent like thing I was told. It changes all the time, but the most recent thing I was told that you need at least 50 reviews from like on Amazon before they'll like push it out to anyone else. And the more reviews, the more it'll be pushed out to more people. So, I mean, if for indie authors, for the very first book, that's like the hurdle, right? Like to get enough people to review your book so that it gets pushed out. Otherwise, you end up having to spend like a lot more money than you want to on like running ads and doing promotions and stuff and giving your book away for free. Like, you don't usually want to do that. Like, if you don't have to, but it's great. Like, it's a great marketing technique. And like for me anyway, I plan on putting Kovas on KU once the second book is out anyway. So I'm like, it'll be kind of free for everyone who has KU. So if that will get like it known, like for the first book, the whole thing is like people knowing you exist. You have to get people to know that you exist. So marketing your very first book, like getting reviews for your very first book looks very different than getting reviews for your second book. Cause like for my second one, I'm not worried about it. As long as I get people like still keep getting people reading the first one, 9 times out of 10, they're going to read the second one and it's just going to like keep going. So
does it matter if people just do like a star review or a written review? Does Amazon care? Is a review in that sense?
I don't think Amazon cares if there's like text with it. I think as long as you give a star review, Amazon knows that you purchased the book and you give a star review. I think that's good enough. I've never heard about text mattering. Obviously, as authors, you want people to like put text if they like it, just because the readers look at that, right? When I look at the Amazon reviews, I'm reading the ones where people actually said something. But as far as like the Amazon algorithm goes, I'm not sure that actually matters.
Have you been reading all of your reviews? I don't think if I ever read a book, I would ever be able to read the reviews. I don't think I could do it. I think it'd be too stressful.
I read my reviews. I definitely do. And you're not supposed to. I see another author on here. We're not supposed to. We're not supposed to read them. We're supposed to pretend that reviews aren't a thing. I know a lot of authors have like a friend who will look at them for them and just like let them know how many they have and like the general feedback. And that's that. Yeah, it'll drive you crazy. I'm lucky, but also unlucky that I haven't had any like negative ones yet.
Because it's so amazing.
I've had like, I think the closest I got was like a 3-star that it just like wasn't her thing, but she still said generally good things about, and it's 3 stars. That's like good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid. When I give a book 3 stars, I'm like, yeah, this is fine. Like that's the worst I've gotten is a 3-star, which can kind of hurt you because there's some people who avoid books that have absolutely no negative reviews. So like part of me is like, oh, I hope at least one person gives me a negative review, but at the same time, I don't want to see that. So please don't negative review.
And then I did see, I think it was Taylor that said, do you care if it says I got this as an ARC or got this as...
Oh, so for Amazon, and I had to like email my ARC readers about this, I'm pretty sure. You cannot use the word ARC in the text of the review because Amazon doesn't want to hear that you're giving away any copies of it for free. So when they see ARC, they equal like in the Amazon world, that equals you gave it away for free. So do not put ARC or free, the word free, in Amazon reviews because they'll like hide your review or not post it or whatever. That happened to one of my ARC readers.
As an author, do you want, like for Goodreads or the other one that you said, do you want people to say that they got it as an ARC, or would you rather all your reviews just be the review and no one say that they got it as an ARC?
I don't mind if people say that they got it as an ARC. I mean, that's only going to be the first, chunk of reviews you get. And then once people read it after that, nobody's going to have ARC in it. So it doesn't really matter to me.
We do have a couple questions. So I'm scrolling up to Patroni Tony. They said, now that you're into book 2, is there anything you've wanted to go back and change in Kingdom of Vines and Silence?
Oh, yeah. I think anyone who writes a series is going to like, if there's any other authors in here still, if you write a series, when you're writing the rest of the books, you're going to wish you could go back and put in like more foreshadowing or like elaborate on some things so that you don't have to clarify these things in the next book. Like, I think if you write a series, you're always going to want to go back and do something different. That's another reason I decided to stick with a trilogy and not longer, because I was like, man, by the time you get to the fourth book, you're just like ripping your hair out, wanting to go backwards and like do some stuff that you can't do. You can't like change critical plot points or anything like that after the book's published. So
Like a special edition republishing or something.
well, like what I'm doing with my newsletter, this is a great segue actually. What I'm doing with my newsletter is just like I'm just gonna write like the stuff I cut from Kobas initially, or that I like had thought about putting into Kobas but didn't. I'll write it anyway, or keep it if it's something that got cut, and use it as like bonus chapter material for my newsletter, so people who already read Kobas can read like the other point of view I thought about putting in there but didn't, or things like that, or scenes I wish I would have written. Now that I'm like into it further, I'm like, oh dang, I should have put that in there. Because like I have the whole thing from every point of view going on in my head, but I only write one point of view at a time.
Yeah.
So I know what the other characters are doing when I'm writing in this other point of view, but I can't write down every single point of view for every moment, or holy cow, the book would be very long.
Yeah, that'd be a lot.
You call them deleted scenes. Yes, a lot of deleted scenes.
Yeah, everyone that's on here, you should definitely go sign up for her newsletter because she's already put out a bonus chapter already if you have not read it.
That was one that was like burning inside of me. I was like, so that particular character, even at the end of Kobas, we don't really know very well. So you're like, I just really needed to write what was going on with him during that time, because he like appears later and you're like, oh, who's this guy?
What's happening here? Emily asked, how long was this brewing in your head before you wrote it, and did you decide to start, and how did you decide to start?
Oh my gosh, you know what's wild? Not very long. Like it wasn't brewing for very long because I just casually mentioned it to my alpha reader, Chloe, and she was like, yeah, write it. Just write it. You just started thinking about that? You should just write it. Write it down. I was like, okay. I have like so many other ideas that have definitely been simmering longer that probably should have been written down first. But this was the first one that like I had someone giving me the confidence to like pursue publishing. So not long. I want to say it was like 6 months from starting to plot it to publishing Kobas. Like it was fast. Because once I started writing, I hadn't written creatively in years. Like I did grad school and undergrad, and like I had written creatively a ton up until I was 18 and then stopped until I was like, 25, because kids in school and all of that. So once she told me to just write stuff down and I started actually writing the stuff down, it just kind of all came out and way too fast. Like I'm
Word vomit.
yeah, like pretty much. I'm positive none of my other books are going to go that way, but Kobas did. I fell out of me in like 8 weeks. It felt like once I had the plot done, the first draft was done 8 weeks later. I was writing like every single day.
Amazing.
I was like starved for writing because I hadn't written creatively in so long.
And then Emily asked, did the finished product end up being how you originally envisioned, or did things change along the way? Like, do you already know how it ends?
Do I already know how the trilogy ends? Yes. Yes, I do. Which also makes your brain like itch to just write the whole thing down because you already know where it ends. And you're like, oh my gosh. If I could just have like a month in a secluded forest with no internet and just my laptop, like I could probably write out the whole thing. I do know how it ends, so that is very irritating for me.
You just want to get there.
Just want to get there, because I know even when I finish like book 2's manuscript, I'm still going to be like twitching because I still know how the whole trilogy ends. So then I'll just need to immediately start writing the third book.
So for anyone that doesn't know, this book has Amica's point of view and Vee, who is the main character's point of view, and it switches back and forth. So who do you resonate with more, Amica or Vee, if there's one that you resonate more with?
That's a great question. I feel like those two in particular are like two different halves of me. Like I wrote Vee first, and she's very much like, she gets real anxious. She you know, she's a healer. She wants to help people. That's very much like who I am. But then I've like always had this feisty side, which Vee does not really have a feisty side, but I've always had the feisty side when provoked. And I feel like I just gave that to Amica. It's like, here you go. Now if I'm writing it, like I thoroughly enjoy writing in Amica's point of view way more than I thought I would. Cause it's like I get to say all the things that I'm like thinking, but politely not saying.
Yeah.
Like
I love that so much that she's like your little outlet.
yeah, those two. And now, so I feel like I've said it in lives before, but book 2 is going to be 4 POVs, which is also how the third book will be. So I've had to switch over to not just writing the ladies. I've also had to write the guys. And that was quite a change because I've had never written in a male POV before, like first person, never.
Can you say which guys? Because I think I know which guys.
You're gonna know.
But can you say which ones?
No, because there's people in here who haven't read the first book, so I'm not going to say who the guys are.
I message you.
Yeah, if you message me, I'll tell you, but I'm not going to say
this
you.
one and this one. I will say for anyone like Lolly, since you've bought it, I think the main reason I love this book so much is because everything I thought was going to happen, like I just thought was going to be predictable, did not turn out how I thought. And I kept going, what the heck? And so I kept getting frustrated because I'm like, oh, I know where this is going. And then it wasn't going in that direction at all. And
that's
so
my favorite feedback that I get from readers. I had no idea that was going to happen. I was like, yes, I did my job.
And it's with every aspect too. Like, I can't say anything, but every aspect, I was like, well, I'm getting it all wrong.
I know. So, like, I do the thing where, like, obviously I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of romantasy specifically, and I feel like a lot of them are pretty predictable. Like, once you read a lot of the genre, most of them, you know, you can kind of piece together. So when I was writing this, I was like, literally while I was plotting it, I was like, what would people think would happen next? I am not going to do that. Like,
I love it.
Yeah, it is so hard not to say anything.
It worked perfectly. I know, Taylor, it is so hard. Me and Jenny talked about this before. We're like, how are we going to ask questions without
asking
questions?
It's like this is the first time I've done anything like this. Mostly because you guys, if I was going to interview with a podcast first, it'd be you guys before anyone else. But also, I am so scared I'm going to hugely spoil my own books because I'm like, I'll just talk. And there are people like in here who haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
But I see a ton of people who have read it already and I want to say something, but I can't.
We're going to do probably a book specific episode where we actually review and talk about the book and go into like all the details that we do with. But we're going to wait until just before book 2 comes out so that we can reread it and then go straight into book 2.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Super excited to do a book podcast about my own book.
Yes. We're finally doing FBA today.
Yeah.
After this.
I check on your guys' podcast sometimes and I'm like, because I listen to podcasts like all day, every day. So I check you guys like periodically to make sure I'm caught up.
Yay. Taylor asked,
Cassie, are you? I can't believe that Cassie is asking questions like we don't talk every single day.
I know, she actually asked earlier, and it kind of goes in with what Taylor's asking, is how many arcs are you doing for book 2? And then Cassie asked along the lines of, are you going to have more or less? Is it going to be around the same arc readers for book 2?
I'll probably aim for a little bit more for book 2, just because, you know, the reviews initially are so important just for like the algorithm to push them out. I did like 80 for Kovas, so I'll probably aim for 100 with book 2. It's a little harder to with the second book because the only like population you have to recruit is people who have already read the first book to arc read the second one. Unless, you know, Kovas pops off super big all of a sudden, like my pool for potential arc readers is much smaller than when I was just asking anyone and everyone to arc read it.
But that's also good because I think correct me if I'm wrong, in your sign up form, it says that you have to read book 1 first and then post the link to the review, which is also great because anyone who wants to arc for book 2 might just go ahead and buy book 1 so that they can do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I like whenever I've posted on like threads and stuff a few times about getting arc readers, and I'm like, yeah, my arc form for book 2 is out. Because people are always like, I want more arcs on there. I swear, I see like every day there's people who want to arc read more. And I'm like, I have book 2 arcs open, but you have to read the first one first. It's $4.99 on Amazon. Like, get the ebook. Like, like you're pretty much guaranteed to get the arc of the second one. Like, I think there's only, I haven't checked recently. There's nowhere near 100 people signed up yet. So
I already signed up.
oh, wait,
As soon as I saw it, I was like, yep, doing it.
Oh, Cassie asked if I'll only ever write fantasy or explore other genres. I think I'll always mostly write fantasy. I do also like a good sci-fi. I feel like I'd have to like have a sci-fi era of reading again first before I'd be inspired to write my own. It'd probably be more dystopian. I was one of those who was like obsessed with like Divergent and Hunger Games and all of those in the 2010s era. So I could definitely see myself writing something like that, but fantasy is definitely my true love. So mostly.
We have the same reading taste.
I know.
I like the odd sci-fi or dystopian. That's why I like Savage Land so much, because it's like both.
Yeah.
It really is, yeah. I told her about that when I got her to read it. And I was like, it reminds me of Divergent. And she's like, well, I've never read that either. And I was like, what? So now she has to read Divergent too. But
I watched the movies. I stopped reading after my Twilight fiasco, so.
the movies aren't it.
Yeah.
They're not
The
it.
movies do not come close to the books.
Nope. They changed. I can't even get into it because I get so heated. Billy was just watching them and he's like, these movies are so good. I'm like, no, they're not. I love Shailene Woodley. Like, she's amazing. But the books, I have to...
I only tried to watch the first... Aren't there more than one Divergent movie? I only tried to watch the first one. Same with Maze Runner. I only tried to watch the first one. I know I only get like halfway through the movies, and if they don't line up like at all, I'm like, no. And I just like throw up my hands and...
See, there's 3 Divergent movies. I'm trying to remember if the last one is broken up into 2 parts like Hunger Games did. I don't think they did, though. I'm pretty sure there's just 3. But 2 and 3, they just went with the wind. And nothing is the same. And I was like, what is happening right now? And Billy's like, this is great. I'm like, no, it's not. This is what's supposed to happen. This is supposed to happen. I'm like, this ending? Definitely not how it ends. I'm like,
yeah, if you change the ending of the book series, like when you transition over to movies, like you're a jerk. Don't do that.
I can't tell you how it ends because I can't wait for your reaction.
Well, Emily, you've only been reading since 2022. I read a ton when I was young, and then, like I said earlier, I took like a hiatus from both reading and writing when I was in, undergrad and grad school, and just, had young kids and whatnot. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 years ago that I like really got back into it again.
Last one from me is, are you doing anything differently for publishing book 2 versus what you've already done for Kovas?
Like, did you learn anything that you want to stay away from or change or go in a different direction publishing book 2?
I'm trying to think. Like, I feel like yes, but I'm trying to think of specific examples. I will not have pre-orders open as long as I did for Kovas because I didn't learn till later that the algorithm like perceives pre-orders differently than it does like once release day happens. So like I'll probably do pre-orders the month before and that's it, because if they're from way before then, it just like it's less likely to push you out if your pre-orders are from like a long time ago.
That's so funny.
The cover, obviously I'm getting a custom, but it's still gonna match, but it is technically custom made cover the second time. I did change map making software in fantasy author life. I started with Incarnate and switched over to Wonderdraft just because it was, if you're a fantasy writer, Wonderdraft is easier to use. And it's like a one-time payment. Like Incarnate was like a monthly subscription, but then you're making the map for like a couple weeks and then you don't need it anymore, but you need to keep the subscription to like keep the map.
Accessible. Yeah.
And I didn't like that at all. So I did just remake the map in WonderDraft.
Yeah, I use Incarnate, and when I saw yours, I was like, I'm pretty sure she used this because the font. And I was like, this looks like Incarnate font. And
I was winging it with that. Like I had drawn it, like hand drawn it, and I was like Googling how you can make a map yourself, and Incarnate was like the one that came the most recommended. And I liked it. I just later learned from other fantasy authors that WonderDraft is more user-friendly and it's a one-time payment instead of a subscription. And so I was like, oh, yeah, if you have to make a lot of maps, you probably just want to have the one-time payment. And then it was easier to use. Like I did the trial or whatever, and I was like, yeah, this is better.
I'm gonna have to look it up because I made my friend is writing a fantasy novel, and I think hers is gonna be a trilogy too. But I made her map for her and I used Incarnate for it. But like you said, now I don't need it, but I still need access to that map and then Jenny's map for the book that she's been working on. And I'm like, don't need it every month though.
Yeah. You're like, okay, I'm paying for this. And I feel that way. Like I already have to do that with BookFunnel, which is like the ARC like software that like manages you. It's so you can like send them and they have watermarks and you can see who downloads it and who doesn't, and it keeps track of all the emails and stuff. And BookFunnel has a couple other like cool features regarding like newsletters and promos and stuff. But if you're an indie author and you're not trying to pay $15 a month for the months that you're not sending out ARCs, you don't have a choice. You have to pay the $15 a month or you'll lose like what you already did in there, and you don't want to lose that. So what
Cassie says, would you ever want to get an audiobook made in the future?
Yes, I would love to get an audiobook made. That's pricey to pay a narrator to do your book. That's the dream. I would love to have an audiobook, especially like switching over to books 2 and 3 where there's 4 points of view and you rotate between the ladies and guys. I would love that.
We've talked to a couple different audiobook narrators, and a lot of them say that there's a lot of up and coming narrators that if you're willing to take a chance on them, sometimes they'll do it pro bono just so that they have experience under their belt and have something to put in their.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there are. I barely have the time to write my books.
Yeah, no.
Finding brand new narrators hasn't been on the docket. Probably that's the kind of thing though, I feel like once the third one's published, that's the kind of thing I'll have time to do when I'm like taking a break from writing. I'll be able to like, because I feel that way with like commissioning character art too. Like I would love to commission character art. I can't afford like the most famous of character artists. Like there's no way. I'd love to find like the up and comers and have them do it, but that's effort and time to find them. So like even in my newsletter, I ask people like if you have an artist that you love that you want to recommend, send it my way, because I would love to have like a list to actually go off of, because trying to find them on my own like across all the social media apps is much harder than I thought it would be.
Just wait until you start seeing just regular character art start popping up from people that just like the artists that love your book and they just make it
scream in my house.
I know that's going to be such a surreal moment.
I know there's like so many. So a lot of authors say to like obviously you have like sales goals that you want to hit preferably, but a lot of authors also are like, make sure you have other goals, like the other goals you want to hit. Like, like I've done this, like I did my first book signing. I did this many book signings. Somebody drew character art, like unprompted. They just drew character art of one of your characters, like the non-money related goals to also look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then since we are at the hour mark, I have one last question for you that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. Since I like to tell people whenever I tell them about your book that it's very like Avatar, The Last Airbender.
I say that too.
Just because of all the different elements and stuff. So going into book 2, are you allowed to say if we're going to see more of that elemental background, like new elements coming? Because we kind of have, the botanical part. We've got the water part.
Yeah, I feel like the first book, like, obviously, I love the first book, but it's like a lot of plot and fast. Like, it's very fast paced. There isn't a whole lot of like deep diving on what's going on in the background. The upside to doing not just Amica and Vee's point of views is that you do get more information about what's going on because the other POVs know a lot more about what is going on than they do. So you do get a lot more of the like world building stuff. But my editor's great, so she's going to make sure it doesn't mess up the pacing at all. So it'll still be like a quick read, but yeah, there's definitely more like magic introduced. And you get a lot of like background on all of the other, pretty much everything that you walked away from the first book with questions. I tried to touch on at least a little bit because I gotta have it all wrapped up by the end of the third one. So
I'm just most excited about the very ending and how it leaves off.
Fine.
That answer being answered, or that question being answered. That's
yeah.
Oh yeah, you'll definitely get that answer in book 2 because I would just be mean if you
that
didn't
would be.
I know.
an answer.
Shane says, "How many books do you plan to write for the series?" And it is a trilogy, but you said you could have spin-offs.
Yeah, it is a trilogy, so like, I have to reference Sarah J. Maas. I love Sarah J. Maas, but like, I feel like that's, you hear about her so much. I try not to use her books as an example, but very much like how her first 3 books are like one storyline and then it's another thing after that. That's possible. I haven't thought about it too hard because I'm trying to get the first 3 out, but like, potential. Taylor, your library has 2 copies? My library has 1. My library.
But just because, since Taylor said that, as a last note to everyone, request it at your libraries because that helps a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
definitely request at libraries. I feel bad because like with a switch to KU later, any ebooks at libraries will be like taken down. So you'll have to request physical copies in libraries, which is still doable. It's just annoying if your library did have an ebook and then it disappears because Kindle Unlimited won't let you have the book in e-version anywhere else to get, because like people, they want to get to know an author before they pay like actual fee on the books. So KU is a good way to reach a lot more people, but also I would like my ebooks available on Libby for libraries. So
Shane asks, "Are we getting a hardcover?"
yes, Shane, I'm gonna look into hardcovers. He was the first person to ask me about hardcovers, and no one had said a word. And Shane was like, "I like hardcovers, and there's no hardcover version." I was like, "Let me look into it. I need to make sure I can do it in this size, so that I can just like make it an exact same copy." Just with a hardcover instead, because otherwise I'm going to have to pay my cover designer to change the dimensions. And if I have to change the dimensions to like 6x9, it's also going to change my page count and it messes with like a whole bunch of stuff. So more people do want hardcovers. Y'all were just not going to say anything to me.
I'm a hardcover girly.
Me
I
too.
definitely
Me
want a
too.
hardcover.
I
Cassie
don't
asks,
tell, but I almost always buy paperback.
Cassie asks, "What are the best ways to support an indie author beyond buying and reviewing?"
Pretty much engaging on any and all of their social media is always super helpful. Like the more people who share things, like things, repost things, then the more like potential for new readers to see it and pick up a copy. Most of my sales have been thanks to like my ARC readers and just everyone spreading the word by word of mouth, which you would think in the days of social media that you could just post and that would reach more people, but people still trust other people more than they trust like advertising. So tell everyone. That's probably the best you can do. Make your own posts if you're up for it. If you're not, just repost when you see the author like post something about their book.
And for your social media, you said you don't have an Instagram, correct?
I do have an Instagram. It's not as like big as my TikTok. I started on TikTok, obviously. This is my home. But my Instagram, my handle is call me L.N Cole because romantasy obsessed was taken. So my handle.
I follow a page that says romantasy obsessed too.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm romantasy obsessed on TikTok, but I couldn't have it on Insta.
So rude. Do you have a Facebook? Any other type of socials that you want people to know about?
No, I mean I have Threads, but that's tied to Insta, so it's the same thing. It's call me L.N Cole. Don't have a Facebook yet. I did get some of my beta readers from like a Facebook group, like a beta reading Facebook group, but I haven't made like an author Facebook yet. Mostly because just managing Insta and TikTok alone can be very time consuming. So I was like, maybe don't add in anymore until probably this series is done. And then I'll have time to dive into all of the socials.
That makes sense. It is a lot. As soon as we started with all of our socials, it just became like a second job, second full-time job. And it's like, this is a lot.
My advice to new like writers who are looking to publish, if you're writing a series and you could swing it, write the whole series before you start. Like, I mean, build up your social media following, obviously, like as a reader and like a soon-to-be author. But if you can write the whole series before you publish the first book and like just stagger the publishing, it will be much easier to handle the marketing part.
Yeah.
If you're not also writing the rest. That's what I've learned.
Well, perfect. All right. Do you have any last minute advice for anyone that is listening or any authors or anything before we hop off?
No, but thanks to everyone on here who's read my book, who's bought my book, is going to read my book. I love everybody here on TikTok because this is like my home and where I found all the support to publish. And I probably would not have been able to do it if I didn't have my like TikTok family. So
be sure to go get yourself a copy and let her know how you like it. And be sure to give her a follow and sign up for her newsletter. And we'll, of course, talk to you after this. But thank you so much for hopping on and wanting to chat with us. It was so good to talk.
Yeah,
I'm really going to message you about book two's POVs.
Yes. Go ahead. I will let you know. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you.